How PCs are built around the world. Hey Internet, Gordon on with PCWorld. We are here at Computex 2023. We're actually at ASUS's headquarters, and I have a very special guest. This is Pedro of PCMR, and I don't know if you know Pedro, but I'm sure you do, but he is basically the ambassador of all PCs around the world. He gets to travel everywhere, and I want to hear his perspective because I realized coming to Taipei that my view of how PCs are built in the US are completely different than how it's done. Because here in Taipei, it's all about walking into a store, picking your parts out. A lot of times they'll build it for you and then you carry your machine out. The US, it's you order the parts, it shows up at your house, you assemble it, or you buy it pre-built. It's so different than US to Taipei. But your perspective is different because you're from Europe, you've also gone everywhere in the world. What kind of interesting ways are you seeing that's so different than the US or Taipei as far as PCs go?
I mean, the thing with PCs, PCs are freedom, so I guess that's what you see when you travel around the world. Like each culture has its own way of doing things, and like you mentioned in Taiwan, it's very common to just go to a shop, just choose your parts because availability is awesome. There's a lot of stuff here. Most of the brands we know are from Taiwan or have a lot of parts always available. And people grew up building like that. The build your own machine is not so popular here like it is in the US. But I would say that considering all the cultural differences, and it's just one world, right? With the internet, we're each and every day becoming accustomed to expanding our horizons and seeing new information. In places like Europe, I would say there's like a mix. There's a lot of mom and pop shops, but the advent with influencers and even like streaming after COVID, people started learning a lot more about building your stuff. It's not quite at the level that it is in the US. And of course, you know me, you know that I would say that building your own machine is, unless something very specific is going on, it's probably the way to go. A few years ago, we saw the advent of GPU pricing being absurd because of mining. So it actually made sense to pick like a pre-built. For a while, it was a lot cheaper and a lot easier to get GPUs. But nowadays, not so much, and gladly. But like I would say that with the advent of information, people are just realizing that they have all these choices. And of course, for some people, they don't want to build their own thing. I would say they should try, but even if they don't, they want to pay a bit more and just get the comfort of getting their own pre-built, that's fine too. In some places like, I mentioned like in South America, especially I know the Brazilian reality, I have some friends there, and there's like a tremendous import taxes for hardware. They have that there, so it's not just PC, but consoles, every electronic stuff in general. So they have like this awesome retro, make your own stuff, retro building of PC. So it's kind of cool to see how they use that. In their case, it's the opposite of freedom. So they have that restriction, but they make the most out of it, like using old parts, overclocking stuff, making sure that games are tweaked so they can actually play modern games with older PCs. That's also, I think you will agree with me when I say that that's also part of what being on the PC, in the PCMR is, like making, taking the most out of your stuff. Like, are you like a build your own machine kind of guy? Do you think people should go for that, or?
I am a build your own. I haven't bought a pre-built probably in 30 years, so I definitely lean that way. Not that there's anything wrong with it, folks, but generally building your own is the way to go. But it's not everybody does it. So, and then it's interesting, like again, like the Taipei example it's fascinating that not everybody, even though you walk around the markets, there's so many markets selling so many components, it still feels like a lot of people go in and buy fully built machines. They have the shop build it, but it shocked me because that's the way people used to build machines like 30 years ago in the US. You'd go into a corner store, you'd pick your parts out, they would build it for you, you would take it home, but you wouldn't build it yourself. So it's just interesting that there's still really popular ways to do it. You know, again, I love retail, and we don't have retail much in the US anymore. So have you seen any other patterns as you travel around the world, being the ambassador for the PC? That's different, like...
I'm just a mere vessel for the good word of PC. But like, I was wondering, like you mentioned that here, like mom and pop shops are so popular. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with the fact that maybe in some places there's still that misunderstanding that PC parts are more fragile than they actually are. Because I think, especially in the US, there's that that tweaking that people aren't so afraid to touch the PC parts. We know that they're much stronger than most people realize. You can just, I'm not telling you should grab your GPU and just try and scratch it on the floor, but it'll probably work if you do that.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if in some cultures, and there's probably not just a cultural, but also a financial component to this, like being extremely careful because, of course, depending on how much money each family makes, it's a large investment sometimes, a PC. And I wonder if it has something to do with that.
I can see that because if it's, again, because of the exchange rates and unfortunately a CPU in the United States sometimes may be cheaper than, like even here, where the exchange rate is different. And if you get to other, geolocations where it's even more expensive, do you really want to risk having your high school kid build their own computer? I mean, that's a far more of a risk, right? Because that's...
It could be a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Maybe like getting rid of the being tied to limitations. And I think in America, probably earlier than in most other places, there's like an independence. People are probably independent a bit younger. Maybe they make their own money, they buy their own things, and they're not so afraid. And especially in Europe, people get away from their parents' home a bit later.
Okay.
Sometimes they're maybe a bit more financial dependent. That's an interesting concept that I never realized. I never thought about it. But it might have something to do with that, because sometimes when you're a kid, especially, it's your parents who buy you stuff.
Right.
In the US, I think people tend to work a bit earlier. A lot of people in the US, or young people in the US, have summer jobs.
Right.
So sometimes you work during the summer to build your own parts, and it's your proud moment to, this is what I bought with my own money, I'm going to build it. Maybe that's not so prevalent in Europe and in Asia, I guess.
Yeah, I wonder if that is part of it. And
Could be interesting.
it's just, and I also realize, because a lot of consoles, like, it doesn't feel like there's a big console foothold here in Taipei to me.
Good, good.
And like, I realized actually going in a lot of those shops that it felt like the PC is the console of the world, right? It has been. It's changed, obviously, but at one point, your main gaming experience was PC because the consoles sometimes weren't available overseas. So I'm wondering if that was like the same thing. They expect a fantastic gaming experience, but they don't want to have to deal with the hassle of thinking about what parts to get, and they're going to trust their local store that they always buy the same computer from.
It could be. What they call hassle, we probably call joy.
Yeah, no, it is, right?
Right? Being able to choose what you want is it's my favorite part of building and upgrading, right? So it's interesting, especially when you travel the world and seeing the different cultures, how people look at things in a different way. It's a learning experience, really. Sometimes there's no wrong and right way to do things. It's interesting for us to be here, as who are, of course, very strongly build your own PC kind of guys, but like seeing how people engage in. I'm guessing, especially with communities, PCMR is a global community, and nowadays most communities are global because the internet, everyone has access. So it's cool to see that some of them might be learning a bit about our ways as well, maybe considering other ways, especially here. And like you mentioned, it's not as inexpensive as people might think. Sometimes it's cheaper in the US, which is kind of crazy, right?
It is crazy because it's a land of plenty. We have all the parts we want, and we get lower prices. It's almost like you have nothing to complain about sometimes, internet, but it doesn't matter.
We're always going to find something to complain about. That's part of the joy of being
on the internet.
Yeah.
You can only complain.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10.
We're humans. Everyone likes to complain a bit, but
yes,
in the end, we're all friends.
It's like having a successful sports franchise, and then you don't go all the way and win the championship, and you immediately start to complain about it. So you don't just go like, "Wow, things were pretty. It was a good ride," but no,
it was good. No,
let's talk about breaking everything up now. So, but anyway, that's cool stuff because, again, PCs are global, and it is really interesting to me, like the different approaches worldwide to it. So, if you have any comments, tell us how PCs are built in your country. Are you doing it at local corner stores? Are you buying pre-built? Are you really getting into build it yourself. Put the comments in there. Of course, click the like and subscribe. And of course, PCMR, where's the best place people can catch up on the latest on PCMR?
If you go to Reddit, it's always our home, reddit.com/r/PCMasters, always.
Cool. Well, thanks for talking to me. More awesome coverage from Computex 2023. It's back.